The widowed farmer adopted an abandoned boy. 18 years later, his biological mother appeared, creating tension. On an isolated farm where tranquility reigned, fate brought an unexpected surprise. Sarah, a young widow, finds an abandoned baby on her property. Years pass, and Thomas, now a young adult, faces the discovery of secrets that will change his life forever. On a spring morning, Sarah, a young 30-year-old widow, wakes to the sound of the wind whispering through the trees and the birds greeting the new day. The farm, located in a remote area of the countryside, is a haven of tranquility. Since the death of her husband, John, in a tragic farming accident, Sarah has lived alone, dedicating herself to maintaining the place that had been her family's home for generations. The days pass in a routine of hard work and long silences, filled only with memories of a lost love. That morning, however, an unusual sound breaks the usual serenity. Curious and slightly apprehensive, Sarah walks toward the sound that seems to come from the edge of her property. As she approaches, the sound becomes clearer, revealing itself as the cry of a baby. Her heart races. Could someone have abandoned a child here? She thinks, feeling a mixture of disbelief and concern. Sarah quickens her pace, and upon reaching the spot, she finds a simple basket covered with a thin blanket. Inside, a baby cries incessantly, its small fists clenched in fear or discomfort. Its large, moist eyes, full of curiosity and helplessness, meet Sarah's, who, without hesitation, picks the child up in her arms. The baby seems to calm down at the warmth of her body, and Sarah, for a moment, feels a strange sense of comfort. She looks around, searching for any sign of the parents or any explanation for the baby's presence, but all she finds is the silence of the countryside and the gentle breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Who could have done this? She murmurs to herself, unable to comprehend the evident abandonment. Not knowing what to do, but guided by a maternal instinct she had never felt so intensely, Sarah decides to take the baby home. Inside her modest residence, she improvises a crib with a wooden box and a soft blanket. The baby, now asleep, seems to bring an unexpected calm to the house, once marked by the silence of absence. That night, Sarah cannot sleep. Sitting beside the makeshift crib, she watches the little creature sleep, feeling a strange mix of emotions, sadness for the abandonment and an unexpected joy for the baby's presence. Thomas, she whispers, choosing a name she had always wanted to give a child if she had one. I'll call you Thomas. In the days that follow, Sarah dedicates herself to learning everything she can about baby care. She visits the small local library and consults neighbors who have children. She adapts her routine on the farm to include caring for Thomas, finding new joy in the baby's smiles and the little babbles he makes. The house, once silent, now resonates with the sounds of new life, childish laughter, Thomas's babbling, and the distant sounds of animals in the yard. Sarah, who once merely existed after John's loss, now feels a renewed purpose. Each smile from Thomas is a reward, and gradually, the void left by her husband begins to fill with the unexpected love for this new life. She realizes that despite her limitations and challenges, she is determined to offer Thomas a home full of love and care. The baby, in return, seems to have given her a new reason to live. Months turn into years, and Sarah's life with Thomas becomes a comforting routine on the farm. Thomas, now 5 years old, is a child full of energy and curiosity, always exploring the fields, playing with the animals, and helping with small daily tasks. Every day, the bond between the two grows stronger, and the farm, which once seemed a place of solitude, transforms into a vibrant and lively home. Sarah teaches Thomas everything she knows about the land, the crops, and the cycle of the seasons. Look, Thomas, the land is generous. If we take care of it, it will take care of us, she says as they plant seeds in the fertile soil. Thomas listens attentively, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. I like planting, Mom. It's like magic, watching things grow, he replies with a smile that lights up Sarah's face. The bond between them is evident to everyone in the small local community. Initially, the neighbors were surprised by the sudden arrival of a baby in Sarah's life, but over time, they grew accustomed to the new dynamic on the farm. Some even bring gifts for Thomas, helping with clothes and toys. Sarah feels touched by the neighbor's kindness but keeps Thomas's true origin a secret, fearing that someone might claim him. To me, he is my son, and the idea of losing him is unbearable, she confesses to a close friend. Thomas, for his part, never questions the absence of a father or other relatives. To him, Sarah is all he knows and needs. "Why don't we have a big family like Mr. Jenkins?" he asks one day while helping the neighbor with a harvest. Sarah smiles and responds lovingly, "Because our family is special, just the two of us. And that's enough." As Thomas grows, he becomes a sensitive and attentive child, always willing to help Sarah with daily tasks. He loves running through the fields after the wildcats that occasionally venture onto the farm or helping to feed the chickens and collect the eggs. Sarah, seeing the boy grow up healthy and happy, feels a deep pride and a joy she hasn't felt in a long time. Thomas's presence also has a transformative effect on Sarah. She, who once isolated herself in her grief and longing, now finds herself laughing more often, rediscovering the simple beauty of rural life through Thomas's curious eyes. "You are my sunshine, Thomas," she says one night as she puts him to bed. "You brought light back into my life." Despite the happiness she feels, Sarah knows that the future is uncertain. The farm, though prosperous, still faces financial challenges, and she worries about Thomas's safety and well-being. However, she allows herself to dream of a future where he continues by her side, helping to expand the farm and, perhaps, forming his own family there. "For now, I'll cherish every moment with you," she thinks as she watches Thomas sleep peacefully. Thomas grows quickly, becoming an 18-year-old young man. He is full of energy and enthusiasm, known and respected in the community for his dedication to the farm and his love for the land. The farm thrives thanks to the hard work of Sarah and Thomas, who form an unbeatable team. Sarah handles the administrative tasks and finances, while Thomas takes on the more physical activities, like plowing the land, planting, and caring for the animals. "You have a gift with animals, Thomas. They seem to understand and trust you," comments Sarah one morning as they watch Thomas interact with the cows in the pasture. "I like them, Mom. And I think they know that," Thomas responds with a calm smile. Despite the farm's success, a shadow of uncertainty hangs over Sarah. She never forgot the day she found Thomas and the constant fear that someone might appear to take him away. Will someone come one day and end all this? She wonders during moments of silent worry. This concern materializes on an unexpected morning. While Thomas is working in the barn, Sarah hears a sound at the farm gate. Approaching, she sees an elderly woman, frail in appearance, leaning on a cane. Is my son here?" the woman asks, her voice trembling with emotion. Sarah, confused and worried, replies that only she and her son, Thomas, live on the farm. The woman, however, insists. 18 years ago, I left my baby here. I was young and desperate. Now I am sick and need to see him before it's too late." Sarah feels a chill at these words, the old fear reviving in her heart. Thomas, who had overheard the conversation, cautiously approaches. "What's going on, Mom?" he asks, looking from one to the other. The woman, upon seeing Thomas, brightens up. "It's you? You are my son," she exclaims, tears streaming down her face. Thomas recoils, perplexed. "Mom, what is she saying?" he asks, his voice tinged with fear and confusion. Sarah feels the ground disappear beneath her feet, unable to respond immediately. After a moment that feels like an eternity, Sarah invites the woman inside. "Please come in. We need to talk," she says, trying to remain calm. They sit in the small living room, where the woman introduces herself as Margareth. She tells her story, explaining that she was forced to abandon the baby due to desperate circumstances in her youth. "I married a rich but cruel man. He didn't want another man's child, and I had no choice," she says, her voice choked with emotion. Thomas listens in silence, struggling to process the revelation. Sarah, beside him, watches the pain and confusion in his eyes. "Thomas, I'm so sorry. I only wanted the best for you," says Margareth, trying to reach for Thomas's hand. He instinctively pulls back, his eyes fixed on the floor. Visibly exhausted, Margareth asks to stay for a while, wishing to connect with Thomas. Sarah, despite the shock and pain, agrees. You can stay, but we need time to process all of this, she responds, trying to hide the sadness in her voice. In the days that follow, Margareth stays on the farm, trying to recover and connect with Thomas. Her presence creates palpable tension in the house. Thomas feels torn between his loyalty to Sarah and his curiosity about his origins. Sarah, in turn, struggles to remain calm and support Thomas as he navigates this new and complex situation. Days pass, and the tension on the farm grows with Margaretha's presence. She tries to get closer to Thomas, sharing stories of her youth and expressing her regret for abandoning him. I never stopped thinking about you, she confesses, tears in her eyes. However, Thomas remains distant, processing the new reality. One afternoon, while tending to the chickens, Thomas finally confronts Sarah. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? He asks, his voice laden with pain. Sarah sighs, feeling the weight of the words. I wanted to protect you, Thomas. I was afraid that if you knew, you might want to leave. And I didn't want to lose you, she replies, her voice thick with emotion. Thomas looks at the ground, his thoughts racing. I will never stop loving you, Mom. You are my real mother. But now I also need to understand who I am, where I come from. Sarah nods, understanding. I know, my love, and I'm here to support you, no matter what happens. As Thomas struggles to balance his emotions, Margareth tries to connect with him. She speaks about the crescent moon-shaped birthmark Thomas has on his back, something she mentions as proof of her motherhood. I remember that mark. I always knew it was you when I saw it, she says with a sad smile. Thomas, touching the mark, feels the reality of Margaretha's story. He wants to forgive her, but the emotions are confusing. Margareth settles on the farm, helping where she can but mainly resting and trying to connect with Thomas. She talks about the dreams she had, the sleepless nights thinking about him, and the regrets she carries. Thomas listens in silence, absorbing every word. He still calls Sarah Mom, but a silent distance begins to form between them. Sarah, seeing this, feels a deep pain. What can I do to keep him from drifting away from me, she thinks, desperate. However, she knows she needs to be strong. You will always be my son, no matter what happens, she repeats to herself, trying to find comfort. Meanwhile, the local community starts to speculate about Margaretha's presence. Who is this woman? The neighbors ask, curious and suspicious. Sarah, Thomas, and Margareth keep the situation a secret, trying to deal with the complex emotions involved. Determined to reconnect with Thomas, Margareth repeatedly apologizes. I know I did everything wrong. I just wanted a chance to know you. To explain, she says, her voice full of sadness. Thomas, struggling to understand his own feelings, responds, I need time. I don't know what to think right now. The tension reaches a critical point when Margareth asks Thomas to call her Mom. He looks at Sarah, who is beside him, with tears in her eyes. Mom, what should I do? He asks, desperate. Sarah swallows hard, trying to hide the pain. You should do what your heart tells you, Thomas, she says with a trembling voice. Thomas leaves, leaving the two women alone in the room. The silence is heavy, laden with unspoken emotions. Sarah feels her heart tighten, knowing she cannot control what the future holds, but willing to face anything for Thomas's sake. The situation on the farm becomes even more complicated with the arrival of a new visitor. One morning, while Sarah and Thomas are working in the fields, a car parks at the entrance to the property. From it, an elderly man steps out, with a stern expression and rigid posture. I am Henry, Margaretha's husband, he announces coldly. I am here to take her back. The surprise is general. Margareth, who was resting inside the house, is called by Sarah. Upon seeing Henry, her face pales. What are you doing here? She asks, her voice filled with tension. Henry ignores the question and looks directly at Thomas. So you are the boy, he says without emotion. Thomas, feeling uncomfortable, remains silent. Sarah, trying to understand the situation, asks, "Why are you here, Henry?" He sighs as if the matter is a burden. "Margareth was obsessed with finding you, boy. She abandoned her comfortable life and came after a fantasy. She is broke with nothing left, and now she wants to redeem her past mistakes." Margareth, with tears in her eyes, tries to explain, "I just wanted to meet my son. I couldn't die without at least seeing him." Henry interrupts with a look of disdain. "She is only seeking comfort in her final days. And you, Thomas, are her last attempt to feel less guilty." Henry's words hit everyone like a punch. Thomas, already struggling with his emotions, explodes. "You speak as if I were an object, something to make her feel better. And you, Margareth, you left me. You weren't there when I needed a mother. Sarah was my mother. And now you show up, expecting me to just accept this," he shouts, his voice trembling with anger. Sarah, seeing Thomas's suffering, tries to offer comfort. "I know this is hard, dear, but we will get through this together." Margareth, crumbling under the weight of guilt, whispers, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything." But Thomas, still overwhelmed by anger, cannot forgive. "You can't just show up and want to fix everything. Things don't work that way." Henry, impassive, watches the scene. "Margareth, it's time to go. You've done what you wanted. Now, let's leave." Margareth looks at Thomas, the pain evident on her face. "Thomas, please understand," she begins, but is interrupted by Henry, who grabs her arm. "Let's go, Margareth," he says, dragging her to the car. Thomas, still furious, does not try to stop them. He needs time to process everything that has happened, to understand his own feelings and decide how to move forward. Sarah, with tears in her eyes, watches the car disappear down the road. "I'm so sorry, my love. I wanted to protect you from all this pain," she says, holding Thomas's hand. He just nods, speechless, the pain and confusion evident in his eyes. As Margareth and Henry depart, Sarah and Thomas remain on the porch in silence. The farm, which once symbolized stability, now seems shrouded in uncertainty. Sarah knows that the road ahead will be difficult, but she is determined to support Thomas, no matter what. In the days following Margareth and Henry's departure, the farm is engulfed in a melancholy silence. Thomas withdraws into himself, spending long hours in the fields, alone with his thoughts. Sarah, respecting his space, continues with her daily tasks but always with a watchful eye, waiting for the moment when he will open up. One afternoon, while Thomas is repairing a fence at the edge of the property, Sarah approaches with 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might like a break," she says, offering a cup. Thomas accepts but remains silent, staring at the horizon. After a few minutes of silence, he finally speaks. "I never thought life could be so complicated. I always thought I knew who I was. But now, I feel like I'm divided." Sarah, feeling the pain in Thomas's words, responds with tenderness. "You are my son, Thomas, and you always will be. Regardless of everything that has happened, or who else is involved, I will always be here for you." She holds his hand, offering comfort. Thomas looks at her, his eyes filled with tears. "I know, Mom, and that's what makes everything so hard. I love you. You raised me, taught me everything I know. But now I have to deal with the fact that I am also someone else's child, who wasn't there for me." He lets out a deep sigh. "I just don't know how to balance this." Sarah, understanding Thomas's internal struggle, speaks softly. "You don't have to choose, Thomas. Love is not about dividing but adding. You can find a place for Margareth in your life without diminishing what we have. What you feel for her is natural. But know that nothing, absolutely nothing, can take away what we've built together." Thomas absorbs her words, realizing the truth in them. He has always considered Sarah his mother, and Margaretha's arrival doesn't change the love and respect he has for her. Yet, the questions about his identity and origins remain, demanding answers. The sun begins to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The two sit together in silence, watching the simple beauty of the evening. Sarah feels a momentary peace, knowing that despite all the difficulties, she and Thomas have an unbreakable connection. She is willing to support Thomas on his journey of self-discovery, wherever it may lead him. In the following days, Thomas begins to come out of his shell. He decides to write a letter to Margareth, expressing his feelings and trying to find a way to forgive her, even though he is not yet ready for a close relationship. Sarah, seeing Thomas take these steps, feels a deep relief. She knows that the road ahead will not be easy, but she is confident that together, they can overcome any obstacle. Margareth, in turn, does not return to the farm. She leaves a letter for Thomas, thanking Sarah for taking care of him and expressing her regret for not being present in his life. Thomas keeps the letter in a special place, as a reminder that his story is complex, but that he has the strength and support to navigate his emotions. As Sarah and Thomas continue their lives on the farm, Margaretha's presence becomes a distant memory, a part of their story that they learn to accept. They understand that love is what truly defines a family, and as they care for the land and the animals, they also care for each other. The farm, more than just a property, is a home where love and resilience intertwine, creating a future full of possibilities.